You are listening to the Teach Middle East podcast, connecting, developing, and empowering educators.
Hey everyone, this is Lisa Grace welcoming you back to another episode of the Teach Middle East podcast. Today I have the wonderful Joanna Povall. She is the principal of Wales International School in Abu Dhabi, and we're going behind the principal's desk. I don't see a desk, so we're going to go behind that cream chair that she has there to learn a little bit more about her. What makes her tick? Who is she as a person? On the wall behind her, she has never, ever give up. Never. And I love that because I love these little mantras and things. Welcome, Joanna.
Lisa, it's lovely to be here.
Before we jump in, guys, we didn't plan this. The podcast is taking place just days after Joanna has been named in the TES Awards as Principal of the Year 2024. Massive congratulations to you, Joanna.
It was a big shock and it's lovely. Thank you. I feel very humbled and very honoured. So all the wonderful people in the world, so that made me feel very emotional about it. And the kids have been so excited at school, but that's what makes it worthwhile.
No, you know what it is? When you win an award, sometimes you feel a little bit like you can't revel in it because it will come off as arrogant. I say revel in that. Revel, you are the Principal of the Year. Revel in that, because why not?
Thank you. That's very kind. It's when you get imposter syndrome and you keep thinking it can't be me because there were so many fabulous people, particularly in the Middle East. You meet all of these amazing principals and you just think, yeah, it can't be me because they're fantastic and I'm just me. So
you are you, and that's all that matters. So take a bow.
Thank you.
How did it start, Joanna? How did you end up in education in the first place?
I'll be very honest, I'm not a career teacher. It wasn't something that I always wanted to do. And I was talking to somebody the other day and it was making me laugh because we were talking about careers education. And I had really appalling careers education when I was at school. So when I was about 14, we had a lady came to the school and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I'd like to be a psychiatrist because that's what I thought I wanted to do. And my careers advice was literally, are you good at science? And I said, no, I'm dreadful at science. And she went, oh, well, you need a medical degree to be a psychiatrist, so you need to think of something else. Thank you very much, bye. And it didn't say, think about psychology, or do you really understand what psychiatry is? And I think what I actually wanted to be was a psychologist, but I didn't realise. So I just thought, oh, I can't be that. Then I thought I would join the police. And we actually had the police came to school and spoke to us, and they were talking about what it meant to be a policewoman or a policeman. And the gentleman who was talking said, what you need to realise is the worst thing that you will have to do, and one of the first things that you'll have to do, is tell somebody that a member of their family has died. And if you don't think you can do that, don't join the police force. And at 14 years old, I thought, I can't do that. I'm not capable of doing that. So that went out of my mind and I just didn't think about it. And then I kind of stumbled into it as I went to university. And then we got together and had our oldest child while I was still at university. And I thought, what am I going to do now? Oh, I'll go into teaching. And it was one of the best decisions that I have ever made in my life because I love it.
What did you teach?
I taught religion. So I taught Islamic studies and religious studies and philosophy.
Lovely. Where did you begin teaching?
Well, when I first started, so I went to Durham University and then I got a job in Manchester and I worked in a state comprehensive school that was quite tough in a tough area of Manchester called Moss Side. So any British people listening will understand where that is because it's quite notorious in the UK. And that was a real baptism of fire in terms of behaviour management. I learned my trade very quickly because you had to survive. I could tell you some horror stories of things that happened while I worked at that school. If you put it in a film, people wouldn't believe you. We had a lady abducted with people with baseball bats, kicked the door of her classroom in. But it was a real... not anything that I was used to when I was growing up. So that was a very interesting 2 years, and then moved up to the northeast of England. I was quite fortunate in my career because I learned very quickly early on that just being there by chance. I do believe in God's rich tapestry and that things happen for a reason. And my very first job, the lady that had been there previously, that not surprisingly had a nervous breakdown and left the school. So they'd had a succession of about 10 supply teachers before I went there. And I turned up on the first day after being told at the interview that it was a department. Well, the department was me. And then because it was religious studies, there was a history teacher, an English teacher, a geography teacher who were all in the department, but they had their own subject area. So it was, right, Joanna, you're doing all the planning. We need your help. We don't know what to do with this. We haven't got any schemes of work. Joanna, can you do this? Joanna. So I kind of, at the age of 22, became the de facto head of department and learned what it meant to do all of the paperwork and do things very quickly early on. And that was great. It was good practice.
It was. Do you know what? As you were talking about being from other faculties and then teaching religious education, I taught religious education for, I think, about 2 years to year 8 or 7 in London. Gotta be honest, it was not my thing. I was just like...
You have to love it. You really have to love it. And I actually miss it. I miss teaching it because I love talking about what people believe and different values. And a lot of you'll know from teaching it, a lot of it's talking about morals and ethics and what people believe in different situations. And I miss teaching it.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Why did you choose that subject?
I just love it. I love it. It's a little bit, it goes back to my original thought about being a psychiatrist. It's a bit of psychology. It's what people believe and what makes them tick. And I just find it really interesting.
So when you taught religious education, was there sort of like a pathway that you saw yourself going down, or did you just happen to, after being the de facto head of department, just kind of became thrusted into leadership, or did you kind of see a path for yourself?
No, I would say I was thrust into leadership and I enjoyed it. And I like the paperwork aspect of it, which I know people don't like. It's not cool and, to talk about the paperwork aspect of it, but I really enjoy it and the policies and procedures. And again, I was talking about this the other day with somebody. I did the COBIS preparation for aspiring heads and everybody laughed at me because we sat there in the middle of the room and there were things all around the room saying, policies and procedures, leading from the heart, team building, children at the centre of everything. And we all stood in the middle and they said, after 3 seconds or 10 seconds, I think it was, run to the one that means the most to you. So I wasn't concentrating. I was trying to think about where I was going to run. And then I ran to where I was and turned around and realised that I was the only person standing next to policies and procedures. And everybody else had gone to everything. And I was like, there's only me. And then the gentleman running the course said, come on, Joanna, you're the only one. Why are you there? And I said, I do lead from the heart. And I do believe that children are at the centre of everything. And I do like to have the team building. But you can't do any of that without policies and procedures. And really, that's been my interest all the way along. I love it.
So after your first sort of push into leadership, where did the journey go next?
It happened again. So I moved to another school, again, teaching religious education, and I was second in department because obviously, I was still quite young. And then unfortunately, the head of department's husband it was quite tragic. He was terminally ill and she made a decision to take time off work and, rightly so. So she took an extended leave to look after her husband. And again, I ended up being the head of department. And I would say it was a confidence thing because probably, in all honesty, I could have gone for a role as head of department even after 2 years because I'd already been doing it for 2 years, but I didn't feel confident enough to do that. So again, I was put in a position where it just happened naturally without me doing anything and not expecting it. And I thought, actually, do you know what? I really enjoy this. So I actually applied for a job in a different school when she came back as the head of department. And I stayed at that school for 5 years. And while I was there, I rose up the ranks within that school. So I started as head of department and ended up, as you call it was a senior teacher in those days. You call it an assistant head teacher now. And interestingly, it was a pastoral role, which isn't really my thing because, like I say, I'm a paperwork person, I'm curriculum and policies. But I ended up being in charge of Key Stage 3 and doing the primary liaison as well. So that was really great.
Why do you think a lot of school leaders, including myself, just can't stand paperwork?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's because it's finding the time to do it because your day is so busy with all the best will in the world, you can't keep up with everything that you need to keep up with. So it becomes a chore rather than a pleasure, if that makes sense. So, I was talking to somebody the other day, I have a PA, but sometimes I'll be sitting with somebody and I don't think, can my PA please come and sit next to me and take minutes? And so I do a meeting and then I'm thinking, now I need to sit down and I need to write that up. I need to register. We use CPOMs in ours. I need to go onto CPOMs and they need to log it. And I'm going, and then I sit down to do it. And then somebody else comes in and they need something. And it's because it's constantly moving. It's really important, but you just can't find time during the day.
I think that is a good reason. And I think the other reason is, I don't know, I just think people who go into teaching are more creative in nature. And so they tend to want to just do the really fun or hands-on type of things. And paperwork just seems to be, that's how I felt. It felt like a bother. Like, I got to write this report.
Yeah, you're right. Because it should be fun. Every day in school's fun.
No, it should be. So then you went to middle leadership, and then up to assistant headship. And so how did your transition into being a principal happen?
I moved to France and stayed there for a very long time in the same school and was the deputy head in that school. Then what happened, so I stayed there for a long time. It's a British school in the south of France, which is a very lovely place to live. And then my husband and I made the decision that we were going to move, and we decided that we would have an adventure and move to the UAE. But for us, the UAE's got a bit of a special meaning because my husband's father actually worked with Sheikh Zayed in 1968 or 69, I can't remember which one. So he came over here when it was still the Trucial States and put the telephone lines in. So all of the telephone lines from Abu Dhabi to Al Ain and from Abu Dhabi to Dubai were put in by my father-in-law. So we've got a connection here. We came here and I worked at international community schools in Abu Dhabi to begin with, in Branch 4, and then in their head office as their education advisor. And this is my PhD. When I have enough time to sit down and do a PhD, being an education director was my absolute dream. When I did it, I discovered it wasn't my dream after all.
That happens.
Yeah. I thought this is what I want to do. I want to work with schools and I want to do school improvement and work with the principals. And it really, I thought I need to get back into a school. And so I applied for the job at Wales and I've been here this is my second year.
Oh, wow. How are you finding it?
I absolutely love it. Like I said, we've got a lot of work to do, but I can see the progress that we've made over time. And that's really important to keep going back to thinking about where we were and where we're at now. It's because I tend to I'm really terrible for focusing on, this is where I want to be and I want to be there quickly. And it's not going to be quick. It's going to take time. And it can be frustrating to think, but I want the kids to be making more progress and we need to be doing the best for them. And that's something that I struggle with, is the frustration of wanting to move it forward, but being conscious that it's going to take time to get to where we want it to be.
Tell me about Wales. I haven't been to Wales International School. I know of it, but I haven't been there. But tell me about it. Where is it? And tell me all about it. Tell our listeners as well.
We are really, really lucky that you are the second person that said that to me, because we had audit compliance yesterday and the lady who came when she was leaving said, "You've got a lovely school. It's so warm and friendly and inviting." I'd never even heard of it before. So the school was started 8 years ago. We're in Al Khanka in Abu Dhabi, which is kind of the desert area towards the border of Dubai. So it's probably the second place that you come to when you cross the border from Dubai into Abu Dhabi. It's an absolutely beautiful school. We're privately owned. Our owner is a local, and he is the kindest, most wonderful person in the universe. He has a business separate so this for him, the school, it's not that it's not for profit, but he's really not bothered about that. He wants the investment to be put back into the community to make sure that we're doing the best for the children. And that's very unusual to be fortunate enough to work for somebody that feels like that. So I feel very, very lucky to have that support. We are about 90% Emirati local children. They're absolutely gorgeous, and the other 10% are mainly Arabs from other countries, and about well, 9% and then 1% are other nationalities, but majority Muslim children. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to work.
What year?
We're named after Princess Diana. So everybody gets confused by the name because it's Wales and people think it's the Welsh curriculum and they go, what's it got to do with Wales? The owner of the school really admired Princess Diana and, just how her humanitarian work and her kindness. And so he named the school after her.
Oh, how lovely. So when you look at the school now, by the way, does it go all the way up to secondary?
Yeah, 3 to 18.
Okay, brilliant. So when you look at the school now, where do you envision it to be going? Like, what are your plans?
I would like it to be an outstanding school, particularly in terms of the achievement of the children. We've got really ambitious kids who, their behaviour in terms of general sort of misbehaviour, kids are kids, but their behaviour is absolutely great. That for me, that's fantastic because you hear stories of other schools around the UAE. Our children are really very moral, and a lot of them, it's quite a conservative area around here. So lots of the children, when we talk in terms of Islamic values in the school, it really means something to them. So they're very moral and they want to do the right thing. But their behaviour for learning is not quite the same. They haven't got the habits of learning and, making sure that they're reading regularly, study habits. And that's something that we really need to work on, making sure that the teaching's outstanding, to make sure that we adapt things for children that are all EAL. Every single child in the school is EAL. So we need to work on making sure that they understand and that we can grow and make progress. I do something called Picnic with the Principal every Friday, and they come, it's hilarious. It's the highlight of my week. So they get nominated by their teacher, and if they've done some really good work or if they've done something kind, they get nominated to come. And I always say to them, bring your books, show me what you're proud of. And they show me their books. And then I've got set questions for them. And I say, how long have you been at the school? Do you think the school's getting better than it was before if they've been here for a while? What's your favourite subject? And I always say to them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's just lovely because it's very rare. When I worked in the UK and even when I worked in France, for most children, even when they were 15, 16, and if you said to them, what do you want to do when you leave school? You would get this, I don't know. The kids here are just they go, I'd like to be a doctor, I'd like to be a lawyer, I'd like to be in the government. They're so ambitious. And it's a big responsibility to get very emotional about it. So I need to make that happen.
Yeah. And in terms of the community in which the school, how involved are they in Wales International School?
I've made it so that they have to be. And to me, we want to be the heart of the community. When I arrived at the school, I would say it was a little bit of an island. So people didn't go out and people didn't come in. And I just said, open the doors. We have to have parental engagement in the school. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. So I have an open door policy genuinely that the parents can come every Wednesday morning. We have coffee morning from 8 till 9. They come along to that. We did a family iftar and just things that hadn't happened before. So some of the things that I'm talking about, people be going, all schools do that, but it wasn't happening here. And I think my favourite story to do with that is one of our dads. I introduced a family cinema night. So the kids could come in and bring their mum and dad, and we just sit and watch a film and we get the popcorn in. And, they just sit with their friends and talk halfway through the film. But it just doesn't matter, it's just socialising. And one of our dads was leaving and he said, thank you for what you're doing for our community. And I said, what do you mean? The kids just running around having a laugh. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you don't understand. There isn't anything in our shamper. We don't have a cinema. We don't have, the activity areas that the children can go to. So you opening the door means that our children can come and see their friends. So thank you. And I thought that was a really nice thing. And that's what I want for the school, just to be the heart of the community.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I think sometimes, and I've seen many schools, gone to tons of schools, sometimes we're tempted to compete or to measure according to, okay, that school is doing better than this school. But I think a lot of that is irrelevant because I think if the school is serving the community in a genuine way and it's improving each year on what it offers to the learners and to the community that it serves, I think that is what makes it an outstanding school. Right. So, in keeping with that whole community feel and community ethos of the school, I'm going to ask you in general, though, how do you think school leaders can help to foster that sense of community in their schools, maybe where it's lacking? So, a bit of advice from somebody who's managed to do that.
I think listen to community. We've had this conversation before, Lisa. You need to listen to what it is that people want. And I think, even by doing surveys, when I first arrived at the school, I did a stop, start, continue survey, really simple, so no huge questions with things that they needed to answer. What does Wales need to stop doing that it's doing if it's doing wrong? What does it need to start doing that it isn't doing already? And what does it need to continue doing that it's doing well? And I looked at the answers that they gave with that and thought, do you know what? You don't even need to write a school improvement plan. The parents have told me. And everything that they said, they know. They listen to their children. The kids see everything and they hear everything and they know what's going on in the school. And then we put all of that together with what we thought the school direction was that it needed to go into, and then worked with people. So having great people come into the school, we've got a fantastic board of governors, we've got a great PTA, getting people involved and just keep listening to them and checking back in with people regularly. It's really important, and doing the fun stuff as well. Getting to know people. You don't get to know a parent who's coming in to complain about the school in a meeting, or even if you pass somebody in the corridor and they say, oh, hello, I'm this parent. You need to get to know people, and doing social events is a really good way of doing that.
Yeah, I do think that is actually quite true. And I also think it's very important to just listen to those little by the way conversations that happen as you're at the gate, or you're welcoming somebody in just to have a chat. And those conversations offer you so much insight into what the community needs, how the school can grow, how the school can support and serve the people in its community.
Absolutely. And I always say to people, a friend of mine said to me years ago, I think she put me on to Brené Brown, and there was a sentence that really stuck out to me, which was, it's better to have 100 tiny conversations than one big explosion.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. That is so true. When you think about yourself as a school leader, we talked a lot, you and I, following on from MESLC, the School Leadership Conference, about empathy and about kindness as a school leader. When you think about your role as a school leader, how do you interweave kindness into what you're doing?
I think it's, I've told you before, it's not something that came naturally to me because I'm from a very hard line of family. So I would say it's something that I've had to learn to do. And I think I told you at the time that the best piece of advice that I was given to that is to always remember, it's a mantra that is in my head all of the time, that not everybody's like you, and treat people with kindness and listen, and people deal with things in different ways. And you have to realise you need to get to know yourself very well. And then you can think, actually, the example that I always give is that this friend of mine that said it to me was, I was getting frustrated and said, but it only takes 10 minutes. And she said, no, it takes you 10 minutes. It might take somebody else 2 hours. It might take somebody else 2 days. Not everybody's like you. And when I'm thinking about trying to be kind to people, it's remembering that we're all different and we've all got different pressures. And I remember, and again, it's knowing people's story so that you can take things into account, really. And I always think of, there was a gentleman I worked with in France, and he had a family, and both him and his wife worked. And they decided for their childcare, because it's not like the UAE, you can't afford nannies in the south of France. It's not that kind of culture in Europe. So that they didn't have a childminder or a nanny or anything. And they decided for it to work for their family, he would arrive at work at 6 a.m, school started at 9, but when school finished at 4, he had to get in the car and go and pick his kids up. And his wife stayed at school till 6 o'clock in the evening because they were both teachers. So they kind of did it in shifts. But my boss didn't come in until later. So he didn't see this chap arrive at 6 a.m. He just saw him getting in the car at 4 o'clock. And his comment was, every day on the bell, there he is out the door. And I said, yeah, because he's got to go and pick his kids up. oh, well, he needs to do that. And he was going out with bags of, carrier bags full of books. And I said, yeah, but what you don't realise, because you don't come to school till 8:30, he's already been here for 2.5 hours. He arrives at 6 every morning. And so I think you have to look at the whole picture and just be kind, because everybody's circumstances are different.
Yeah, I think recently I heard this quote, do not expect you from other people.
Oh, I like that one.
And so, that one kind of stuck in my mind. And so when we think about kindness and empathy as school leaders, how do you then ensure that people don't take that kindness and that empathy for granted, or even weakness?
Yeah, you have to be fair. And we've talked about that at the conference. And I think it's something that you have to be mindful of, because if you do it for one person, then it opens the door to having to do it for other people. So it's within boundaries. And I think, like I say, you need to take different things into account, but you also need to make sure that you're being fair to everybody. Otherwise, it just becomes a free-for-all. I remember a story when I was working in the UK where it was a lady, her husband had bought some tickets for a football match and had accidentally done it on the wrong day. So they thought it was a Saturday. They hadn't looked at the dates correctly. It was a Wednesday. It was in a different part of the country. So could she take a day off? Well, the problem was, being kind, she was told yes. But then that opened the door to absolutely everybody else in the school going, well, hang on a minute, if she's had a day off for a football match, I quite fancy going to visit my son at university and I'm going to go a day early. And so you just need to be really careful that it's within guidelines and that it's fair to everybody.
Yeah, no, that's true. And we did knock that out a bit at MESLC. Wanted to go back to something though. Your school is in Shamka. It's not the most known school. So well done on you for winning Principal of the Year and really kind of, getting that spotlight shone on your school. How do you attract staff to Shamka?
Can I tell you, it's been a really interesting 12 months. So it depends who they are, because I'm European. Driving for half an hour or 40 minutes is nothing to us, but I know it's very different in the UAE. So you can actually get to the city centre of Abu Dhabi in 40 minutes. I would think nothing of that. So, I used to live on Reem Island. It would take me 40 minutes to get there. And I just went, well, it's fine. That's what we do in Europe. So for a lot of Europeans, it's really not that they're not that bothered. But again, I said it at the BSME conference, it's been really, really interesting that this year, because of the context of the school and because it's really important and it ties in with the values of Princess Diana and kindness and compassion, the school's values are respect, honesty and care. And because we're in a very conservative area, we've really gone with the UAE national identity. We've got a lot of Emirati students and we've taken that on board as, although we're a British school, we want to reflect the UAE national identity and Islamic values. And it's been really interesting that this year we've had a lot of British Muslim people who have been attracted to the school because they want to work in a school that has Islamic values. And they're feeling, I think it was Kai Basha said it at the BSME conference when I mentioned it, some people are feeling a little bit disenfranchised in the UK as Muslim people. So coming to a school which is British, they're British trained, they want to come to a school that they're comfortable in, and the Islamic values aspect of our USP is really appealing to British Muslim people.
That's a nice little niche you've carved out there.
Yeah, it's been really interesting.
So I want to change gears a little bit, because this podcast, I love to, especially behind the principal's desk, I love to do, talk about school and talk about pedagogy, but then I also want to talk about you. So I'm just going to go kind of left. When you are not at school, what are you up to?
Usually working. I never switch off. I'm terrible. I've got it totally wrong for myself. So when we talk about kindness and empathy, I'm not very kind to myself. I never, ever, ever switch off. But although sometimes I am getting better at it, sometimes I do like to go for a nice pool day and switch off and read. My husband is a little bit worried because all I read, if I'm not reading, you can see I'm as bad as you. I can see your books in the background. I've got millions of books in my background. I'm either reading educational books or I love a good murder mystery. And I frighten my husband by telling him I'm doing research.
Research and murder mystery. You do have to get that balance a bit better though, Joanna.
I know.
You can't work every single day, and you cannot sacrifice not being able to switch off, because
I'm terrible.
as much as you love Wales International School and you love your job and you love what you do, there is still you as the individual that needs nurturing, that needs that time to really build back so you can give. If you had the opportunity to switch off for a day, no pool involved, no books involved, what would you do with that day?
I think I would go to all of the lovely places that you can go to in Abu Dhabi that are serene. So I would go to the Sheikh Zayed Mosque because I enjoy going there. That's somewhere where I feel like a switch off and I feel very peaceful when I'm there. And then just opposite, I don't know if you've ever been, there's actually a memorial to the martyrs of the UAE. And it's bang opposite the Sheikh Zayed Mosque, and it's such a peaceful place. There's a beautiful fountain in the middle, and then they've done a sculpture in memory of everybody that's given their life for the UAE. And sometimes that's a nice place to go, and I can watch the sunset behind the mosque. It's truly beautiful. Or a walk across Saadiyat Beach would be nice.
Oh, yeah. I love Saadiyat Beach. I think it's the best beach in the UAE.
Me too.
It's beautiful. And in terms of family, you are here just with your husband? No kids?
Yeah, just here. Our kids are in the UK. So I've got two children. One is 24 and she works in HR. She loves that. And my oldest one is 30 years old and she is an English teacher. So she's followed in my family footsteps. And I've got two grandchildren who are 7 and 3. And the 7-year-old, it's hilarious. She wants to be a teacher when she grows up. And when I said to her, why do you want to be a teacher? She said, because I'm bossy. And I said, okay. And then she said, and she just cracks me up. She said, we're not little kids, though. Little kids are annoying. And I said, you're 7. And she went, yeah, I mean like reception. They're 4. They're annoying.
I mean, she knows what she's talking about. She's closer in age with them, so she can actually figure out. I asked my kids, I don't know what I've done to my kids. They never mention school or teaching or education. If I say to them, where do you see yourself working when you're older? What do you want to do? Education comes nowhere in that conversation. They want to do engineering or game design or something in IT. One of my sons wants to do culinary arts. He wants to become a Michelin star chef. He's really good, actually, at cooking. I don't know where that came from. Not me. And so I'm thinking I've done a number on them because they're like, nope, that is not my forte. They don't want to do that.
Yeah, watch this space, though, because my oldest one, I would have said exactly the same when she was little. And I think secret confession time, I don't mind telling the world. I'm very honest. You're used to me, Lisa. I'm just always very brutally honest about it.
Go on.
If you ask my children, they would probably tell you that I was the worst mum in the world because school always came first. And I actually thought, if you speak to my youngest one, she would say absolutely no way would she ever have gone into education because she saw me. And when my oldest one was little, she wouldn't have said, and I think it's something that she thought, I think I could do this. And she's actually really, it warms my heart because sometimes I'll get a WhatsApp message from her and it's a photo of a kid's work and she goes, look at what one of my kids did. And it's just like, that's what you want in a teacher. And, it really comes from her heart.
I think, well, here's the thing, right? I think your daughter is probably kind of like at that stage when she was refusing, was thinking of the hard work that you've done, not looking at the satisfaction. Now she's gotten to the point where she can see how satisfying a role it is. My husband is an ex-teacher as well. I'm sure he's going to, when he hears this podcast, because sometimes he does listen, he's going to be like, why would you tell the world that? Because now he doesn't do anything. He's do anything in terms of teaching. He's an accountant, but he's always been like, if our kids go into education, it's probably because that's the last thing and there was nothing else for them to do. Because I think what happened was when they were really young, I was leading a school in Al Ain called Al Shaheen School, and I was always about school. And so my little one grew up saying things like, shh, Mommy's in her office. She has a meeting. Like it was bad. That was kind of when I made that change, is because I realized, I'm not paying enough attention to them. So I think I might have turned them off permanently. In terms of going a little bit futuristic now, what excites you about education and where it's going? And also, on the flip side, what worries you?
Can I start with the thing that worries me and then go to the positive, because I like to end with the positive.
Yes.
I think I love technology. I think it is really, really useful, but it scares me for the future, for the children. And I think I can see wonderful things and I can see the benefits of it, but I've got a real fear of losing our ability to think. And even myself, I was watching the other day, something stupid was in the background while I was working on TV, and there was a gentleman who picked a telephone up and dialed a number, and that number didn't work. So he dialed another number. It was something from a lot. And I thought, do you know what? I don't think I could do that because I use my phone so much. I can't remember what anybody's telephone number is. I know what mine is. And I know my mum and dad, we've had the same telephone number for about the past 40 years. But if you said to me, phone Lisa, I'd be going, oh, hang on, I need to look at my phone. And even now, when I was younger, we lived quite close to my grandparents, and we used to have Sunday morning coffee morning where all of the aunties and all of the uncles and everybody would get together. They would alternate houses. And one of the newspapers used to do a crossword, but it was a trivia crossword. And we used to sit there and they would go, oh, what was the Bay City Rollers hit in 1975? And they'd be going, I can't remember what it is. Can you remember? And the whole family would sit and do this trivia crossword. And sometimes there was an answer that we couldn't get. And you literally had to wait until the week after until you got the answer. And there was one night, my husband had never forgiven me because we were at home and there was a question and it was, what's the capital of Libya? And nobody could remember what it was. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I woke my husband up and went, Tripoli. And he went, what? And I went, it's Tripoli. And he went, what are you talking about? And I went, the capital of Libya. And he went, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, I just remembered it now. And it was, but that was trying to remember things. And I think we've got so used to, if I don't know what the capital of Libya is, I look it up on my phone and I find it in 2 seconds, but it's not going in. And it just worries me that in the future, if we're relying on technology so much, we're going to lose our memory.
Oh, wow.
So that scares me.
I don't think it scares me that much. So you have to pardon me because everybody who listens to this knows I'm a massive tech buff. I think we will find other ways to sharpen our brains. I think we will evolve. We are a species that evolves, and I think we'll evolve and we will find ways to sharpen our mental acuity, and I think we will be okay. So if that helps you.
It made me feel better, thank you. Which leads me on to my thing that I really like, which is the future of education. And I really feel that the direction that education is going and looking at people's well-being, it is something that's really important, particularly children. And obviously teachers and staff are important too, and parents. And I think if we can work together as a community, that's really important. And just looking after each other and looking after each other's well-being is important. Even though I'm useless at doing it for myself, doing it for other people, it's really important.
Yeah. I'm not enjoying hearing that you're not taking care of your own well-being, Joanna. I have to be honest with you. I think moving on from this podcast, I think I want you to really sit down and think about how you can make sure that you carve out time for yourself. How do you know when you're not well? What?
My neck. I'm telling you, it's like this at the minute. So I feel it in my neck that I can feel the stress and the pressure, and I'll start going like this, and I think, I'm not good, because I can feel the tension.
Do you do any kind of physical activities?
Lots of walking.
No, I mean purposeful.
No, not proper sports. I haven't got time. I need to join my husband. My husband swims every day. Every single day. He will go after work, he teaches, he will go after school, he'll swim. At the weekend he gets up and swims, and I need to start joining him doing that.
Yeah, or, if you are not even a swimmer, swimming is excellent. So you should either do that or find something that you really enjoy that you can do for 30 minutes at least 5 days per week. It's super important. Like, if you are going to be the example, when I talk to school leaders, I always ask them this: what are you doing to take care of yourself, to fill your cup so that you can give from your overflow? And it sounds like you're not filling your cup, Joanna.
I've got my homework from you. I promise you, I'll try.
Yes. Or, it starts small, a morning stretch. There are loads of stretch and yoga videos and stuff online. Just start with a 15-minute stretch and work your way up as you go through that. Because as much as you want to really bring your school into its next phase, you have to be well enough to do that. And so for everybody who's listening, who's a leader and who really wants to take their school or their business or their establishment forward, you can't do that if you're not well. And so that's why well-being, like you were talking about, is so super important. And then when we also think about the fact that if AI, and we're not going to need our memories as much as you just told me, then we have to kind of now start thinking what our place is in the world as human beings. Because if AI can do things better than we can, or machines can do things better than we can, then what can we do better than them? And that's what we've got to hone in on.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree.
Yeah. All right. Before we wrap up the podcast, we are in the third term of the year. So summer plans. What are your summer plans?
Oh, you're going to laugh. I am in the first week. It's still work, sorry. So in the first week of the holiday, I am very, 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 very lucky. My husband is not speaking to me because he is so jealous. I am a COBIS lead improvement partner, and for many years there is a school on Ascension Island which has been desperate to be a COBIS member. We did their compliance for COBIS online, and they have invited me to do the COBIS accreditation visit on Ascension Island. So I have to fly to the UK, go to Bryce Norton RAF base and get the RAF plane for 9.5 hours to Ascension Island, which is literally in the middle of nowhere. There's one flight there. And then the flight back, so it goes from Oxford to Ascension Island to the Falkland Islands, then turns around and comes back to Ascension Island and then back to the UK. So I'm going there for the first week to do their COBIS accreditation. And I'm so excited because I don't think you have to actually be invited to come to the island. You can't just go. The governor has to give permission for you to go because it's a high security base for the RAF. So I'm really excited about that. And then when I come back to England, I'm going to stay there and spend some time with my family.
That sounds good. No, that sounds exciting. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with me, Joanna.
It's a pleasure. It's really lovely. I love speaking to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Teach Middle East podcast. Visit our website, teachmiddleeast.com, and follow us on social media. The links are in the show notes.